It's a name that probably won't jump off the page like some of the other heavy hitters in the industry, like Hideo Kojima, Shigeru Miyamoto, for better or for worse, and Neil Cuckman. But Ken Levine, especially if you're a early 2000s, the late 90s, early 2000s PC gamer, System Shock and the original Thief back in the day, or hell, maybe if you were kicking around during the 7th generation, PS3, the Xbox 360, and I think BioShock ran better on the Xbox 360, but I digress. But yeah, if you're familiar also with the BioShock games, BioShock and BioShock Infinite, you're probably familiar with the work of Ken Levine, and you'll probably like him quite a bit for BioShock, and you might have been confused by him with Infinite. And well, he's working on a new project, but he also has some insights as to the degradation of the overall industry, and honestly, the man's bang on. Because BioShock and BioShock Infinite director Ken Levine says games getting bigger has led to creative stagnation. You stop taking risks, and people just tune it out. Well, I mean, he's 1000% correct. It's just, what do you think is causing the bloat there, Ken? In the opinion of BioShock franchise creator Ken Levine, the video game studios' continued obsession with making their works bigger and bigger has resulted in an industry-wide dearth of creativity, particularly as expansive budgets have led to the prioritization of trend chasing over innovation, which, that and also all of these superfluous divisions within these much larger companies have led to, these overly long credit sequences, which, let's keep it a buck, man. What was it, 2 hours for Assassin's Creed Shadows? For as much as I love the game, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, it had like a 45-minute long credit sequence. Given a lot of that is stylized, but as I just recently rolled credits for the first time, and maybe by the time that you guys are seeing this, thankfully for a second and final time on Final Fantasy 16, the one thing that I can say good about that game is if you hold X, at least the credits will scroll a little bit faster. But Christ almighty, man, that was still like a half hour long, and that was a game that was overly expensive and underperformed for very good reasons, because it's very bad. But there are so many support studios. There are so many unnecessary employees at these large AAA studios that are so unnecessary to game development, especially when you had a game that come out earlier this year. You might have heard of it, and I might have referenced it before, called Clair Obscur Expedition 33, which Sandfall Interactive, the young startups over there, had 32 developers, 32 and a dog. And they created, which will probably end up being the game of the year, but I digress. Levine, who is, who in the decade since directing BioShock Infinite's Burial at Sea DLC, has focused his creative attention on developing his upcoming sci-fi FPS, Judas. He offered his perspective on the challenges facing AAA game development today while giving a rare interview to GamesIndustry.biz editor-in-chief James Batchelor in December of 2024. Asked by Batchelor as to what restrictions or challenges the time pressures of development put on storytelling and advancing how stories are told in games. Good question. The System Shock 2 designer lamented, I think one of the problems we have in the industry right now is that games have gotten bigger and bigger, and the graphical capacity has gone up and up. All right. Just creating a door now versus creating a door 10 years ago takes a lot more time because you have normal maps and traders and higher polygons and physics and all the other stuff to contend with. Everything's getting more expensive, especially at the big AAA space, because they're spending the most money. And when you're spending all this money, naturally, you have people concerned about the commercial viability of it. But the problem with AAA is that you don't innovate, especially in games. You start losing people because they've seen it before. And so we have we potentially have an over-reliance, in some cases, on franchises. It wasn't easy to step away from BioShock, he then admitted. I never thought I'd have an established franchise. I tried multiple times and only made a couple of games, but that didn't have a sequel. But certainly, I never really had a successful franchise before BioShock, but I saw an opportunity to create a new IP and take some risk. I'm very fortunate that Take-Two put their faith in me, and not everybody has the wherewithal to do that, especially in the last few years, which have been very challenging because, now he's out on his own making the Judas game. And while we've heard about this title for a long time, and honestly, like somebody whose opinions and whose takes on media, who I very much respect, is in fact working on this project, a YouTuber that I reference quite a bit, The Little Platoon, he's apparently working on this game, like he's working on the story behind it. So I was already anticipating this game because the BioShock 1, and for the most part, like I like a lot of the stuff of BioShock Infinite. It just, definitely does get flumpy towards the end, but Ken Levine has a very keen eye on crafting very, very, very engaging worlds, whether it is, Rapture, which is iconic to this very day. 2007 was when that first came out. Holy crap. Or with Infinite, it's like Columbia is, as much as I've only played, Infinite once and BioShock once, like both of those are still very vivid memories in my mind. So yeah, whatever he's doing with Judas, I really hope it's successful. And from what we're hearing about it, well, the BioShock maestro, Ken Levine says Judas is very old school because you buy the game and you get the whole thing. No online component, no live service. This is what I love to hear, man, because I know people like games for a multitude of different reasons, whether it's the social aspect, the communities and the good feelings and vibes that spring up around games. But for me, they're an opportunity to relax and engage with a story in a different way than you could with a movie or a television show. It's a lot more immersive, and when you properly do long-form storytelling, which is only possible across a multitude of sequels, whether it be a movie or across multiple seasons if it is a television show, but you can get that in a video game. And you don't have to wait years for a story to conclude. You can get 10, 20, 30, dozens of hours out of one contained experience, and it stay with you for a lifetime because you're engaged with it. That's why gaming is so great, man. And that's why I enjoy it so much. And to hear something like this from somebody as competent as Ken, I just really hope in the past decade he hasn't lost a step. But we'll take a look here. It's been more than a decade since BioShock Infinite's 2014 expansion, Burial at Sea, tied a bow on the series that Irrational Games and director Ken Levine will always be best known for. Infinite was an infamously chaotic development that resulted in a divisive game in a bloated studio, which would go through brutal layoffs and be rebranded as Ghost Story Games, the whole point of which is to operate as a much smaller scale than Irrational reached. First game, Judas, certainly looks familiar, and in a new chat with Night Dive's Lawrence Sontag, Levine says that being very old school is what they're going to do, discussing Ghost Story's approach and how Judas fits into the contemporary gaming landscape. Alright, Judas is a very old school game, says Levine. You buy the game, and you get the whole thing. There's no online component, no live service, because everything we do is in service of storytelling and transporting the player somewhere. And yeah, in so much as there's no online component, I know that BioShock 2, which wasn't developed by Irrational, I forget who got that, but I know some people like that multiplayer, but I remember when it first came out, it was very much derided as being superfluous and kind of detracting from the overall polish of that game, and I know people like it in retrospect. It's just I've actually never gotten around to play it. Back to Ken, and we're very fortunate, and this is no diss to any of the developers who have done that, because look, games are expensive to make. We're very fortunate to work at a company where they believe in us enough to say, okay, it's been working, you've been working on this thing for a long time, and it's going to cost a reasonable amount of money, and we're not going to push any of that stuff on you. Later paragraph is a necessary caveat because Levine is in an unusually fortunate position. Senior leadership at 2K clearly thinks he's something special, and with a golden goose like GTA 5 and then the upcoming GTA 6, which, wow, there's early projections on that, and holy shit, it's going to be huge. Who could have seen that coming? Can afford to bankroll a relatively small scale studio like Ghost Story for over a decade. I suspect that even if Judas doesn't sell all that well, which, I mean, it could resonate well. Okay, and especially if it's a good game, but you're trying to bank off of the reputation of, it's like, hey guys, it's a guy who, worked on System Shock 2, a game that when Judas eventually does get released, could be 30 years old. And then also, by the time that, references to, and he was also, the mastermind behind BioShock. Oh, cool. A game that is 20 years, holy shit, it could be 20 years old by the time Judas comes out. Or 10, 15 years removed from BioShock Infinite, the last game that he did. It might not be huge. I just hope that it's good, all things considered. Levine adds, I understand why it happens, right? I don't blame anyone for trying to make a living, but I just want to have an experience with a game where all I want to do is entertain me. There's no ulterior motive. Large parts of the industry have unwisely decided that such traditional single-player experiences no longer make enough money, but as Levine points out, successful examples abound in recent years. Baldur's Gate 3, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, and Kingdom Come Deliverance 1, Clair Obscur Expedition 33, and even on the AAA side of life, stuff. Like what are Sony's tentpole releases, the ones that have garnered both the most critical and commercial acclaim, God of War 2018 and Ragnarok, and even, to eye-rolling admission, Horizon Zero Dawn sold like 21 million copies. Forbidden West, less said about that, but those were ostensibly single-player experiences. And then, of course, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is a complete and total 150 hour experience if you're willing to engage with every single aspect of that game. And that is no DLC, no add-ons, no nothing like that. You could just go ahead and hop right in with the base game and you're getting the entire damn thing. Even with Final Fantasy VII Remake, okay, you got like a 30-40 hour experience if you want to run back the hard mode on that. And even if you wanted to engage with the DLC, with a full-on expansion, with the intergrade Yuffie story, like, you're still getting, okay, a 10-hour game right there with new mechanics and new side content, a fresh experience for $20, and depending on if it's on sale, and I think Sony's having a big sale right now, so it could in fact even be at a reduced price. Like, yeah, single player games still exist and they're still very good and they're still very well regarded. It's just they don't make anywhere near as much as a Call of Duty, a Fortnite, or anything like that. And yeah, with so much money on the line with a lot of these AAA games, these studios are still chasing that success. These are games that are really traditional single-player games, says Levine, and they don't have any kind of monetization in them, and I think the audiences reward those games, especially in the AAA space, because they can get so expensive that people want other methods of monetization. I'm just grateful that we're allowed to not do that, because that just frees us purely to design the game for the player's experience. Just pursue the player's joy. Yes, the most recent trailer for Judas is from January 2024, and Levine says it's doubling down on reacting to player choice because that's the future of games. Yeah, because there's been a lot of games that have said, paid lip service to the idea that, yeah, player choice, yeah, it's definitely going to matter, looking at you, Mass Effect Trilogy. Because, yeah, depending on what you do with the big daddies in the original BioShock, I don't remember if there was a similar mechanic. There might have been something like that in Infinite, but, having a proper branching reactive storyline, maybe that's why this thing is taking so goddamn long to come out, because, yeah, there is literally no updates on this one. It's been about a year and change since we have heard any sort of update in development outside of, whatever Platoon throws out every once in a while, because he's on the story team and he's apparently still working on the story, so this bitch could be a long time coming. But even with that said, Ken Levine, well, he hasn't missed a step when it comes to understanding what it means to be a good and competent game in 2025, even if we aren't going to be seeing it until 26 or 27. So with all that said, thank you all very much for the gift of your time. I've been Don Consuelo. I want you to follow your gut and get after it. Take care, everyone.